Over the next few weeks, I will be sharing a series of discussions with several of my friends on mission titled How a Disciple Making Movement, or DMM, helps to meet the needs of the community. Each of the guests live in neighborhoods, communities, and cultures within those communities with a diversity of people and needs. And they are all representing Christ and helping bring his peace in ways that are culturally relevant and theologically sound. I am excited to share this with you and encourage you not to miss any of the episodes with the guest in this series. Now prepare to engage with this week's episode. My name is Thomas Clark, and welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, where myself and guests help equip you to bring the peace of God to the place you live, work, learn, and play, all for his glory. Every problem is a discipleship problem. Being a disciple of Christ does not guarantee that we will not have problems. It does, however, give us the tools to face the challenges of life that come our way. My worldview is that Christ transforms culture, and he does it through his followers. The goal of Takeoff is to equip you for movemental thinking when it comes to making disciples. This is season 4, and I am excited about all the possibilities and everything we have lined up for this season. Okay, let's get into it. And this week we are picking back up on part 2 of my conversation with Nalisha Logan and how a disciple-making movement helps to meet the needs of the community.
That's what he did. He got into a relationship with himself. I mean, the incarnate. He got in a relationship with himself, and so this is good. You know, something. I always got to have some receipts, and so Luke 16:8 it says, "So the master praised the dishonest manager for being clever. Yes, worldly people are more clever with their own kind than spiritual people are." Now, I read that because one of the things that the world does, or people do, the world is kind of innocuous, but people do, is they assess what's needed and how to best meet needs. That's one of the things they do. You know, essentially, they they wouldn't do. They wouldn't put, or they, if they're smart with business or savvy with business, you wouldn't try to open up a salon in a community that has 5 other hair salons. It just probably is saturated and probably don't need it. You know, no matter how good you think you can do hair, it's like there's no need over here for this. And yet, sometimes, and again, I'm not being critical, but sometimes what we've done is we try to just find a place and say, okay, let's put a church here, or what we call a church, as opposed to organically saying, wait a minute, let's see what's needed. Let's see what's needed. And you mentioned where you live, you mentioned where you work, you mentioned where you hang out. And each time what you've done is you've talked to people to find out what's needed.
Yes.
And that way you can show up in ways that mean something to them. So here's to that end, let me ask you a question. How have you assessed the needs? Now you kind of talked about it a little bit. I want you just to unpack that a little more. You know, you want to use some of the same stories or different stories, but how have you assessed the needs of the community or mission fields where you live? How have you assessed the needs that in your community?
For me specifically, as I mentioned, being present first. I mean, you have to be present in your community to know the needs of your community. And that means building those relationships, but also through having conversations with people, being observant as I'm walking, as I'm praying. And then honestly, sometimes making it simple, asking people, what do you feel like our block is missing? Or what do you feel like Westchester is in need need of. Because like I said earlier, sometimes we make it more difficult than it needs to be. I was reading my email the other day, and one of the things, and I know where you live, they may be doing the same thing. They're doing this strategic planning. So it's this survey that they want every resident of Westchester to fill out, and you're specifically saying, what do you personally feel we're missing in that Westchester needs? And so you could take that same idea, that same concept that a whole town is using, and simplify it. What do you think our block is missing? What do you think we need? Now, I love dogs. I've always loved dogs. I spend a lot of time with my dog, walking her. And a lot of people that live on my block and in my neighborhood also have dogs. Some of them have cats and other animals, but the majority of them have dogs, and all of them walk past my house. So that's how I'm able to engage with them as I'm walking my dog. But right now, currently, our dog park is under construction. So what I've done is tailoring like my community meetups, my social momentums around like dog meetups in the park, like getting other pet owners together just to simply play, have a conversation, and have our pets meet one another.
That's good. And for those who in one of the previous episodes, if you can always, not now, you always go back and check out previous podcast episodes. We talked about the differences of a micro church and a missional community, and we say essentially they do the same thing, except one is affinity based, one is geographically based. And when Nalisha described, even though she has a missional community, what she described, even with dog owners and dog lovers, and is potentially the genesis even of a micro church, where it's around that affinity of those who like dogs. And you can hear the dog in the background every so often barking, because that's what she does. But yeah, so that's good. Again, now, admittedly, that's work. It's work, and I'm not criticizing anyone, but it's more than just showing up one day a week and watching other people do something. When I've said in the first season or second season actually of the podcast, is that we were built for more. Mm-hmm. God designed us for more than to show up and watch everybody else do something, and then be told there's only one thing we can do. And while finances are necessary, particularly making disciples are necessary, and I don't apologize for that, but unfortunately, sometimes we told people the only thing they can do is get finances, as opposed to, you've named several ways already that God has used you. God has used you. So that is awesome. That is awesome. Now I want to pivot a moment. It's all connected, you. I want to pivot a moment though, because sometimes we and the people who we engage are what's called ethnocentric. And I think this is necessary to talk about this because if we talk about meeting needs and meeting people, we don't want to be ethnocentric with it. And because when we're ethnocentric, we can jump to conclusions or engage other people based on our own cultural assumptions. By definition, ethnocentrism is the use of one's own culture to measure another's culture, putting one's own culture, their ethno, at the center, centrism of interpretation. And typically, unfortunately, we devalue the other culture because it's not what we like. It's not what we like. We should instead be ethnographic. Ethnography is a rich description and analysis of a culture that includes in this case, missional pastor, the person of peace, and Nalisha's experience of being there. In other words, Nalisha, engage with people in their culture based on our experience, her experience with them, our experience with them, and not our own cultural thoughts, interpretations about what they're doing or saying. And what that does is it helps us determine the meaning and value of words other people use, and also serves as a guardrail for what we use with them. So, for example, by being ethnographic and knowing her neighbors, there's certain things when Nalisha knows her neighbors that she may not necessarily say to them because she understands how they may interpret it. And it may be interpreted in a way that you don't mean for them to interpret it. Now, I think that it can grow across the board, but especially where you work in critical care, and people are unfortunately very ill, and a family are very vulnerable. Being ethnographic helps immensely to not say certain things that, while you may mean well, it may be offensive, hurtful to the people that you're there to care for. Have you experienced that, Nalisha? Or when have you been, first of all, before talking about that, when have you been ethnocentric in the past, before you even knew anything about ethnocentrism? Now that you know, when in the past you've been ethnocentric regarding your neighbors, co-workers, or even your classmates?
I would say specifically my coworkers, because I do work with a very diverse population of people, not just in the hospital, but on my unit as a whole. But I would say because we're human, we all have some type of bias. Now, a lot of some of it can be conscious, some of it can be unconscious bias. But we have to first recognize that bias, and sort of work to counteract that. Learn about different cultures from their perspective, like you mentioned, and not our own. But we have to be very culturally sensitive, because we want everyone to experience God's love and peace, not just specifically one race, one age, or one demographic. But for me, I was ethnocentric because I am an African American woman born and raised here in Chicago. But it was kind of like a cultural shock to me when I first started working at the hospital that I work at, because there were so many different cultures, and the way that they talk or they interact with people is different from how I would approach a patient or how I would approach a conversation. But I had to kind of throw out those biases, and just get to know them for who they are, and just have an open mind and open heart, and not be so quick to judge people based on my background and what I've seen and what I've learned. Because again, they're from a different culture, a lot of them from different countries actually, and they've now since became, migrated to the US. So you have to keep all of that in mind. I try to be ethnographic, especially when it comes to patients, so that I can be culturally sensitive, because I want to make sure that I'm giving them the best care possible. I don't want to be offensive to them, but it's hard not to offend somebody when you don't understand or know their culture. So it's just keeping an open mind, learning, and then not being afraid to even ask them questions about their culture, to say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm speaking to you how you would like to be spoke to, that I'm addressing you in the manner you would like to be addressed in, that I'm respecting your cultural beliefs. Like a lot of times, as a nurse, when I have a new patient and I'm admitting them to our unit, that's actually one of the first questions we ask them, and we assess them, yes, to take care of their medical needs, but we want to make sure we're taking care of them, the whole being. So I asked them questions about how best do you learn? Are you a person that, I can simply have a conversation with you? Do I need to act it out? Do we need to practice this? Do you need to visually see it? We ask them those questions. So I try to adapt that into my overall life. We also ask them questions about what are your spiritual beliefs? Because I want to make sure I respect your spiritual beliefs just as I want you to respect mine.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much for coming by the podcast page. I really appreciate it. Hopefully the information that is shared has and will be able to benefit you and also the people you know. Listen, if it has been, or you believe it will benefit you, I'm asking you to do me two favors. First of all, please follow. Yeah, click follow. That way, every time a new episode is released, you will be alerted and you can stay current on everything that we're talking about. But additionally, I'm going to ask that you consider supporting Your financial support goes a long way to help me help others in the work that we're doing in creating disciple-making movements. For your monthly or yearly support, not only will you receive access to episodes before everyone else does, but you also will, on a monthly basis, have a live Q&A with me where I will be able to answer questions based on the episodes, the questions you may have and what's been shared. There's only so much that myself and my guests can say during the podcast recordings, but during the live Q&A, we can take a deeper dive into questions you may have, ways that we've seen it play out and work out, and perhaps even some suggestions that you may have that we may be able to comment on to help you and help equip you to help bring the peace of God to the places you live, work, learn, and play. Thank you again for following and for supporting. I appreciate it.
No, that's good. I'm thinking, what you said with the questions that you ask, that you all ask, not just you, but your unit, people in your unit, people in profession ask, particularly many people to your unit, means you're treating the whole person, the total person, and it's holistic, and people can heal better when there's holistic healing. And what one person needs, likes, requires, or prefers may not be what another person needs, likes, requires, or prefers. Yet you have to be in being incarnate, because this is good, because it goes to someone will say next is not your transition, but it's so important. I'm going to tell one little anecdote and then go on. The other day, I had to take Kyle, and for those who don't know, Kyle is one of my other children, Nalisha's brother, and I had to take him to get some blood work done. And when we were leaving out of the clinic or the hospital, getting the blood work, there's a man standing there with a dog. And initially, I thought it was emotional comfort dogs, whatever, but it wasn't. For him personally, it wasn't. It was the dog used for the hospital for patients.
Oh, it was a therapy animal.
Yeah, therapy dog. Yes, I know when I got up on him and I saw him talking to one of the nurses and everything else. And listen, I'm not a dog person. I have nothing against dogs. I'm not a dog person. I'm not a pet person. That's not doing dog. I'm not a pet person. But that's fine. But it's kind of, we're leaving out though. It was interesting. Me and the man passed each other going different directions. And I thought about it then. I said, well, again, even if I'm not necessarily a pet person like that, this dog can potentially help someone else, because it's about treating the whole person, being holistic. And that's the thing in being incarnate, letting Christ show up through us, is he's here for the whole person. And we show up for the whole person. So that's good, because I want to give you an example and then ask you two more questions, and we'll be done. This is really, 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 really good. In Mark 6, Jesus feeds 5,000 men besides women and children, because they are hungry. That's what they need. As a matter of fact, the word of God says in Mark chapter 6 that he saw them. They came from all towns and places in the area. They went to him, and he felt sorry for them, like a sheep without a shepherd. He taught them, and got late in the day, verse 35 of Mark 6. And his followers said, no one lives here is late, send them away. And Jesus said, verse 37, give them something to eat, because that's what they needed.
Yes.
He saw he knew what they needed. It wasn't just a rope. And I'm not criticizing, but it wasn't just let's open a food pantry and feed people. No, it was this is what they need. But here's what I want to get to. We're talking about being incarnate was important, what you just said, the whole person. Because the next day in John 6, chronologically, John 6 is and 25 is the next day after Mark 6. So it's the very next day in a chronological order of it. And it says and Jesus left. He didn't stay there, and they wonder why he left. And he basically told them, he said, you only wanted me because of what I did for you over there, but you don't need that now. You don't need me to feed you now. You get your own food. I got other food for you. And he's talking about now the bread, him being the bread, his blood being what they need to drink. And essentially what he tells them, though, is that Moses gave you bread from heaven, is my Father gives true bread from heaven. God's bread is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then ultimately, verse 35, John 6, he says, I am the bread that gives life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Now, that's important again, because on one day, they needed physical food because they didn't have it. But because Jesus was incarnate and he knew what was needed, he says, now that you've eaten, now I can pivot and not just keep feeding physically. You need something more. You need something spiritual. You need something more than. So here's what I ask you, Nalisha. Two more questions for you. First is, what have been some benefits of you being incarnate where you live? What's some benefits of you being incarnate, Christ living through you and fleshed in you in your community? How have the community and even you have you benefited from that?
I would say the main benefit for me is just the genuine and authentic relationships that I've been able to build where I live, work, learn, and play. Now, when I leave, specifically with my neighbors, like when I leave outside, they're not strangers anymore. I know them. I can call them by name, and they know me as well. And we're here for one another. And then when it comes to where I work, again, those relationships were not just co-workers. These people that were once strangers are now like a second family to me. They know that they can come to me with their needs or their problems, and I know that I can do the same with them. And through those deeper relationships and those genuine relationships that I've been able to build, it also allows me the chance now to be served. So it becomes like a two-way relationship. I'm able to serve them, and then I'm just blessed and honored by how God allows them to serve me as well. I mentioned earlier, like with my dog, like through, walking my dog, I'm able to like meet and interact with neighbors. And just through that, naturally, one of my neighbors actually came and knocked on my door and was like, I see you all the time outside with your dog. I have all this dog food, expensive dog food, actually, wet dog food, Rachel Ray. If you have a dog, you know how expensive that is. She was like, oh, I'll give you the case. Just through us getting to know one another, she was able to bless me. So I just love that how God is moving there and where I work. Now, when people experience different things on my units, they feel comfortable, asking me for prayer. Or if something's going on, I'm like, it's funny. But if there's a difficult patient, they're like, oh, give them to Nalisha, because she is going to be able to take care of them. She's going to be able to get along with them. And I'm like, it's not me. It's that when they experience me, their experience is God's peace. So there can't be chaos where God's peace is. So
That's
blessed by that.
That's good. That's really it. That really is good, because what you're talking about really helps us to have, and you've developed what we're calling a local theology and testimony. That's what you have, where you've taken Christ, a global Christ, and we use this term with the Luncheon Pad. I've used it in this podcast before in previous episodes. We're global. We serve a global Christ, but we have a local theology, how he is contextually relevant, and why. And that's very important, because as we see him move locally, then we don't necessarily need to see him move like he moved before, because every time he comes in, things are better. Things progress. We don't keep doing the same thing, same old 369. No, things don't remain the same, because Christ transforms culture, does through us. It does not mean that our block, our job, our Starbucks, or wherever else you hang out at is going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean we can see something become better
Yes.
for him because of that. and we get to contribute, not sit back saying, oh, when are they gonna come in? Because what they have proven is when they come in with their own agenda. Whoever that they are, they always have their own agenda. And when Christ comes, he has an agenda also.
Mm-hmm.
That's to transform for his glory. So I really, really appreciate it. This is I already know now going to be one of the better episodes of the Takeoff podcast. And beyond that second, you talking where you work initially, it was a little garbled, but I thank everybody for hanging out because the audio got bad at the end, and we're gonna make it do what it do. So let me ask you this, because I always end with 2 questions for the audience, inclusive I will statement. You're familiar with that, but before I go there, any ending or final remarks or comments or anything you want to say, Nalisha?
I would just say my final remark is just to pray, ask God to show you how to connect with your neighbors, your co-workers, even students if you're in school, and just be open, obedient, and willing. And I'm telling you, you'll be amazed at how God will move through you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you hanging out and contributing. I told you all she's doing great work over there in her context, in the place she lives, work, learn, and plays. And we appreciate that. So here's, as you all, if you've been here before, then I always end with a couple of questions. If you're first time here, then please get a pen and paper ready for your questions. First of all, how can you, as a result of sharing, what was shared, I should say, as a result of what's been shared in this episode, how can you show up and address the needs of the community in which you live, work, learn, and play? Hopefully, between things Nalisha said and some questions that I posed to her and little anecdotes and stories that I shared, you have some ideas, or God has been speaking, and you heard him speak, give some ideas of ways you can show up. So how can you show up? Write it down, because again, the whole purpose is to start a disciple making movement or to advance a disciple making movement. That's the whole purpose of this podcast. And we give you practical tools to do it. But then lastly, what is your I will statement? As a result of engaging in this episode today, you will start or stop, fill in the blank, and then who are you going to share it with? Who are you going to share it with to help you be accountable? Again, not just to regurgitate what Nalisha said, but also to add your own story to it so that you can do the same thing. Again, we've been talking today about how Christ can transform culture and help us address the needs of the community. And thank you so much, Nalisha. Thank you all for engaging. And remember, everybody, let's take off.